We love talking to Jim Molan. Before we get to him, though, there's plenty of tensions in and around Taiwan about Australia's necessity to step forward and help protect that democracy. But the Japanese ambassador had a bit to say about it today.
We oppose any unilateral attempt, coercive action to challenge the status quo and increase tension in the East China Sea. In fact, Australia and Japan came up with a strong statement in this past June in the form of 2+2 joint statement. For the first time in history, importance of peace and stability over the Taiwan Strait was highlighted. So hopefully, through direct dialogue between parties concerned, the issue will be resolved.
In the documentary China Rising, which will be replayed over the weekend here on Sky News or is on demand on Foxtel, and more info at skynews.com.au, Tony Abbott had this to say about the importance of a country with the same population as ours being protected, that being Taiwan.
Taiwan is a democracy, a pluralist democracy of 25 million people. And why shouldn't a democracy of 25 million people in the South Pacific be concerned about the fate of a democracy of 25 million people off the coast of China?
And of course, one of the ghosts from the past says it's not our problem at all.
Taiwan is not a vital Australian interest, We have no alliance with Taipei, none. There's no document you can find. We do not recognise it as a sovereign state. We are committed to ANZUS for an attack on US forces, but we are not committed under ANZUS to an attack by US forces, which means Australia should not be drawn, in my view, into a military engagement over Taiwan, US-sponsored or otherwise.
A lot to chew over with Senator Jim Molan. Senator, we see pretty obviously two very different worldviews. I'd imagine you're of the Albertine view, not the Keating view.
Paul, I am very much so. And I think the natural roadmap of what Tony Abbott is saying worries me a little bit. The old saying about speak softly and carry a big stick is still very, very relevant. We just don't have a stick. And that's the real problem. We've come a million miles, and shows like the Sky Show on China, the 60 Minutes show that was shown a couple of days beforehand, your show, Paul, the McGregor angle, even the ABC's last Q&A. I couldn't bring myself to watch it because I'm still very frail health, Paul, and probably still me. But it is reported to me that it was very, very good on national security and defence. So we've come a long way in acknowledging China bad. What we haven't done is then take that natural corollary and say, OK, when does this country, Australia, become defendable? And this goes back to the point that you and I have discussed in the past, that unless you start with the nature of this war, you're going to find yourself going around in circles. For example, I totally agree with Peter Dutton when he says that it would be hard to believe, incredible, I think he said, if we don't find ourselves supporting the US if they go to support Taiwan. Well, I'd suggest to you, for every good, logical military reason, we'll be too late. The US is probably likely to be beaten in the Western Pacific by the time we clear the heads in Sydney. This is the real problem we've got. We're not linking strategy, which we're seeing emerging quite well through the Defence Minister, through the Prime Minister. We're not linking strategy with the operational concepts of how you fight a war and with the tactics of what we've got to fight the war with.
Bloody oath.
So we're making a million miles on shows like Sky, etc., to say that we need to face up to China and China represents a threat to us.
Yeah, it's that thing that, when we're talking about, say, health issues, right? There's that phase of raising awareness. I think awareness is raised. Now it's about action, it's about prevention, it's about all those other things that we would do when it comes to health. Perfect example of that is about the Five Eyes organisation. So, of course, Australia, Canada, the United States, the UK, New Zealand, sharing information when it comes to intelligence, military intelligence, and some big things being said today by the Director General of the Australian Signals Directorate about not expanding beyond the 5 that we currently have. this in part is what she said. Certainly in signals and cyber security space, we go back to the Second World War and even before that. So when you think about an alliance and a set of relationships, capability and integration that goes back nearly 80 years, it's sort of framing an issue as, oh, can somebody else join in today? Now, I'll be honest, I've got my issues about where the current New Zealand and current Canadian governments are, and maybe their attitudes towards things like China. But how do you feel about a sixth or seventh eye?
Well, I think you could make a case for a country like Taiwan. You had the ambassador on there quoting him before. A country like Japan.
Yes.
You had him saying some great words before. We've come 1,000,000 miles, and Japan has come 1,000,000 miles. You know, we're talking about the Quad, so we'd look at India. The big problem is going to be that it's taken years for us to enculturate the idea of classification, the idea of secrecy, the idea that throughout that Five Eyes organisations, which is priceless, absolutely priceless. To replace us would cost us $100 billion, you know, just to start off. So this is something which, even if you said tomorrow, okay, Japan can come in, India can come in, whoever can come in, you then got to set up that culture of secrecy within that organisation, within that country, that meets the requirements that we have set ourselves, and which since 1945, with a few exceptions, a few notable exceptions, most of those 5 countries have done. So we've kept the secrets relatively well, and those secrets give us such an advantage.